All right, we have made it to video 3, in which we will look at the new assessments for secondary math. So the first thing is the common formative assessments. These are quizzes. They are intended to only take a few minutes out of the class period, well, maybe up to half of the class period with passing them out and collecting and so forth. But they are intended to replace the mid-chapter check or other quizzes you might be using that maybe aren't great. These are very TEKS-based assessments, and we'll look at one of those. And then we will look at some review questions that are also very well TEKS aligned, and some summative assessment questions which are TEKS aligned as well. So let's get to it. Here is the first CFA for 8th grade math. Actually, I think this is the second CFA for 8th grade math. And CFAs are not intended to be graded with a Scantron. They need to be hand graded, but they're very short, so they shouldn't take too much time. But what we're trying to do here is figure out where a student is struggling while we're still in the middle of the unit, so we can help them with those misunderstandings, and by the time we get to the summative assessment, we have helped to correct those, and so the student is able to perform well on those summative assessments. For example, in question 1, here they are ordering these numbers from least to greatest. We were very thoughtful in which fractions we used, what the denominators are. We have here decimals and fractions, mixed numbers. In the second one, we are still ordering numbers, but this time we have some irrational numbers included. Also, this was a table, and now we have bullet points. Here, we're still thinking about ordering numbers, but now we're putting them on a number line. We've brought pi in, and we have a perfect square. Finally, on the last one, we're back to just some rational numbers, but we do have a percent here and some negatives. So when the student is putting these in order, you'll notice we're asking them to show their work. So if they do make a mistake, we can help them to find it. Also, some good information here would be if a student does really well on questions 1 and 4, but they have trouble with 2 and 3, we can surmise that they are struggling with the irrational numbers. And then we can look at their work to figure out where we can help them to better understand how to order the irrational numbers with the rational numbers. That's the idea behind a CFA. It's not only what do they know, but where are they struggling and how can I help them. Here is an Algebra 1 CFA. They are supposed to circle all tables that represent a function. Not only that though, whichever tables were not circled, they have to show us why. So for example, they should circle this section right here, or box this section right here, because here we have the same x value paired with 2 different y values, and that is how we know that this does not represent a function. So it is not just what do they know, but where are they confused. Here they're simply evaluating f of negative 12. 3 is like number 1, and 4 is like 2. But this is a much more complex function than the question on number 2. So if they're able to evaluate 2, but they have trouble with 4, then there's some more good information for the teacher. So those are the CFAs. Again, they're little quizzes. Shouldn't take too long to give, shouldn't take too long to grade, but hopefully will help students to be more successful by the end of the unit. Now here's a review. This is 7th grade Unit 1 review. And all of our reviews are grouped by TEKS like this. So here's 7.2a, choosing which representations are not correct. Maybe they can identify the wrong representation up here, but now can they place the numbers in the diagram where it belongs, right? Then we move on to 7.3a, performing operations with rational numbers. And here, before we ever solve a word problem, we ask them to determine which operation they would use to solve that problem. So they're not solving anything here. They're just telling us which operation they should use. And then we move on to 7.3b where they do actually solve the word problems. You'll find that in a lot of the reviews, we move back and forth among the different TEKS. See here we're back to 7.3a again. Now we're back to 7.2a again. And we're just covering all the different ways that you might look at the concepts in the TEKS so that we can make sure that students understand them as well as possible before we get to the test. Now this particular review has 23 questions. Would I expect a 7th grader to complete this review in one class period? Of course not. What I might do is say 3 days before the test I might go ahead and pass out the review and ask students to complete the 7.2a sections because they finished with that part of the unit. Then maybe the next day they do the 7.3a sections. And then on the last day, the day before the test, all that's left is the 7.3b sections, or something like that. You'll decide how you want to use them, but the point is we are giving you here a bank of 23 really good questions that should help students really make sure they are prepared for that unit assessment. And here is a unit assessment. Now this is something that can be graded with a Scantron, GradeCam, or Aware, whatever you use, because everything is multiple choice or critical. There are some different question types coming down the road. We will begin implementing those next year in the next school year, but this current school year we are sticking with multiple choice and critical. And at the end of each test, of course, we're giving the correct answers, but we're also labeling it so you know which TEKS is being assessed by which question. And you can be confident that this unit test is very well aligned with what students are expected to know. And I will talk more about that in just a couple of minutes. But you'll notice there are only 12 questions here. I think most of us prefer a unit test to be closer to 20 questions. So this is not a complete test. What it is a collection of 12 really good questions that you can build from. Many of us are making changes as much as we can every time we learn more about the TEKS or more about where our students are coming from or whatever. We're updating things as much as we can, but we do not have time to update everything. So here's where we're trying to help you guys out a little bit. Some of you may be using tests that were written back when the TEKS were brand new. You may be using a test written by a teacher that you never even met. You don't know where the questions came from. Or maybe you're using questions from the McGraw-Hill test bank, and those were also written back when the TEKS were new. But we know a lot more now about what the expectations actually are. We know more about how these are going to be assessed. And because of that, we are able to write much better questions now than we could then. Now, we know that you all would update your tests, but there's just too much to do. So we have tried to give you a head start on those updates by providing you with 12 really good questions to build from, and then you can bring in your favorite questions that you already use in your Unit 1 test and flesh this out to be a complete unit test. So hopefully these questions will be helpful to you in making the very best tests you possibly can for your students. Now, the last thing I wanted to look at is how did we come up with this composition for these unit assessments? So let's take a look. Now, this is an analysis of Unit 5 in 8th grade math, which happens to be the Pythagorean theorem unit, but it's a good one to look at. There are 4 TEKS in that unit, 1 readiness TEKS, and 3 supporting TEKS. Now, we know that this readiness TEKS has been asked twice every year. The supporting TEKS have each been asked 4 times out of 5 years. So these are also very important supporting TEKS. You know, some supporting TEKS are only asked once in 5 years, but these have all been asked 4 times. So these are all really important, and we want to take that into consideration when making the test and split the questions up according to that importance. So with that knowledge, then, if we're making a test bank of 11 to 15 questions, we think about 5 of them should come from 8.7c, and then 2 or 3 from each of the supporting TEKS. And this is pretty evenly split among the supporting TEKS in this particular case. Now that we know about how many questions for each of the TEKS, we want to think about what those questions should be. Now the reality is we have to prepare our students for the STAR or EOC exams at the end of the year. Our job is to teach the TEKS, and that is what we do. But then at the end of the year, our students have to prove that they have learned all of the TEKS. And so they need to be prepared to answer the questions in the way that they are asked. Many of us have probably been in a situation where we have a concept that our students did really well. They could answer questions about that all day long. They did great. But when we get to the assessment at the end of the year, it is asked in such a way that our students didn't even know what they were trying to do. So in order to try to minimize that, we have really analyzed how each of the TEKS are assessed in order to make sure our students are very well prepared for that. So based on that, if we're going to write 5 questions over 8.7c, what should those 5 questions look like? And here is how we decided what questions to put on that unit assessment for Unit 5 in 8th grade. Now, I tell you all of this so that you know when you look at those assessment questions, you know that you can trust them. We've put a lot of time and effort into analyzing exactly what the TEKS are, exactly what is expected of our students in each course, and exactly how they are going to be assessed. And all of this with the intention of making sure that our students are able to demonstrate their knowledge at the end of the year in the way that they will be asked to do so. I would like to finish up today by reminding you of our math department mission statement. Kristen and I are here to support teachers as they promote academic achievement and empower students to excel in math. We will accomplish this through an aligned curriculum, instructional best practices, and data-driven assessment. That is why Kristen and I are here. This is our whole job. So here's our contact information, and if there's anything we can do to help you, please let us know. If you have any trouble opening any part of the curriculum or understanding any part of the curriculum, or if there's anything else we can do for you, we are always here to help you, so please get in touch. Thank you so much for all of your attention today. I really do appreciate each one of you, and I hope you have a wonderful 2020-2021 school year.